Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another video. Today we are going to look back at my preseason record predictions on the AFC side for this video. Next Tuesday I'll do the NFC side, and before I get into it, after next week I'm going to do one video a week again on the NFC side, on the NFL portion of my YouTube channel. The gaming will stay Saturdays, but the NFL videos will be on Wednesdays, starting the week after the Super Bowl. So keep that in mind, and we'll get into it now. This is the current records. Like, you have the Broncos at 14-3, the Patriots at 14-3. You saw the Patriots get to the Super Bowl on the AFC side this year. And now, let's look at my preseason predictions. Yeah, they were a little bit of a doozy. Yeah, you can see quite a bit of misses. You can see quite a bit of hits. Let's start with the Patriots, because honestly, I had them at 8-9, and nobody expected how well they would do this season. Like, I predicted them to start 0-2, and then have some bad losses here and there. It's like growing from in year one type thing. I did have them losing to the Saints in week 6, the Jets in week 17, which those are pretty bad losses, and it's based on how the teams ended up playing out today. And those would have been pretty bad losses, but overall, this overall was not too bad of a prediction, actually. Just now, record-wise, yeah, it was kind of a bad prediction, but nobody knew that the Patriots was going to get to 14 wins throughout the season. And even just make it to Super Bowl. Nobody expected that coming into the year. Maybe a wild card berth at max, but nobody expected Super Bowl. So I can't give myself too much. I gotta give myself a little bit of slack for this, because Vrabel, first year coach, Drake May being the second year QB, You were not going to see that in any other year all too much. So, yeah, I'll give myself some slack for the Patriots. Let's go ahead and move on to the Tennessee Titans. As for the Titans, yeah, they did end up being one of the worst teams in the NFL. I think they don't have the 1 pick, because that's the Giants. No, that's the latest. Latest Giants has 1 and 2. But the Titans was among the bottom of the league again. So I can't give myself too much slack for this one. Who did I give the number 1 pick to again? It was the Titans. Okay. The Titans I did have as the number 1 pick in the draft. But overall, you can't really say all too much. The Titans did have a little bit of a winning streak towards the end of the season. So, hey, you know what? All fair. And I just did not see any of that, especially when, okay, I guess you could say with the Browns, but otherwise, the later half I did view as a little bit of a tougher schedule. Now, the Jaguars and the Seahawks, yeah, I did. I think you see within the record predictions here, have them at losing records. But for the 49ers and Chiefs, those two were top teams in my mind. So, of course, they were going to lose those. Maybe a little bit easier than what I originally thought, because these two are the only playoff teams that I had within after the bye. But they did end up being one of the worst teams still. They were up and coming towards the late in the season, so I think next year I will have them a lot higher of a prediction. Like maybe towards like what I predicted with the Patriots this year. Patriots, Panthers, Raiders. More towards that 6, 7, 8 range. And I'll try and do that meme, by the way. That was completely accidental. But yeah, I do think the Titans may end up getting over to that range of wins in next year, but at least for this year, this was an overall good prediction to have preseason-wise. The Browns, yeah, honestly, this one was also more towards the close end. Like, you're not going to see people project like the Browns at like 10-7 realistically or anything like that. And they did end up getting to 5-12. But I had them at 3-14, which honestly isn't all too bad. I did get them to win against the Bengals week 1, considering that's what everyone would have preseason. But just throughout the season, you did see fewer wins than what I expected, which honestly, kudos to them. They did have that mess of a QB situation for me to like absolutely do anything with, and I just did not trust their defense. So yeah, you see quite a bit of wins against teams that are either division rivals or just flat out worst. That I just projected to be worse than the Browns, which, yeah, with the Steelers and the Bengals being the two division rivals that in the Browns won against, I got the splits right. I just got the wrong splits. But, like, the Bengals won week 1, but the Browns did in week 18. And same kind of thing with the Steelers, where the Steelers won week 6, but the Browns won week 17. It definitely was at least a little bit off, but you know what? I'll take that. Moving on to the New York Jets. For this one, you did kind of have to expect a little bit lower as well. I at first thought maybe they would do like 5-6, but then when I was looking at the schedule and all that, I settled on 4 wins. Just due to like the schedule, wasn't entirely sure how well Justin Fields would pass. I did expect him to be better than what he was. Like I truthfully did. But even then, 4 wins ended up being like, how much did they get exactly? 3 wins? Yeah, only a 1-game difference, which isn't all too bad. And yeah, I just truthfully thought the Jets would be better. And I did have 2 of the 4 wins come before the Bengals game, which that Bengals game was the first game of that the Jets did win. So honestly, I'm not going to say this was a bad prediction. Like, these 3 teams truthfully were towards the bottom end of the conference anyways, so you cannot really say all too much. For the Dolphins, yeah, I did see them having a little bit of a tougher year than what they actually did. Like, at first, they did have a really tough year. Like, they were not getting wins. They just looked awful. Tua got hurt again. Things was just a mess. And it even got to the point where, like, they started to quit Ewers towards the end of the season. So, at least it wasn't too bad. They did have a winning streak in the middle of the season, though, like, around this time. I'm pretty sure it was, like, Ravens to... Sorry. Let me see again, because No, the Ravens did win. It was from the Bills to the Jets that they had a little bit of a winning streak. I at least knew it was like to like over here. I just didn't remember exactly what. But overall, they did have a little bit of winning streak during that end. And honestly, even just within that winning streak, the Bills and the Commanders, nobody expected would have like as bad of a season as they did. Well, Commanders kind of just completely fell off from last year, and the Bills, they still did end up getting into the playoffs. Not as a division leader, since the Patriots did overcome that, but the Bills did end up having the same record of 12-5 as I did end up having the Bills at 12-5. So, while we get there, I'll have to give myself huge credit, but we're talking about the Dolphins right now. But yeah, overall, the Dolphins just absolutely did not do all too well, and I kind of have to give myself a little bit of credit for like predicting this season to not be all that great. And then this is such a bad one. Like, you know what? I'll give myself a little bit of credit. And looking back at it, and you gotta say the same thing with the Patriots. Like nobody knew the Jaguars would be this good heading into the season. Like, okay, there was probably some people that did have the Jaguars like winning the division, but maybe not like 13-4 good. I just didn't see it all too much, like immediately. Like Liam Cohen with the Bucs last year did only have like one season with Baker, and I felt like it was maybe a little bit more like just Baker being pretty good. And I guess we saw this season Baker not being all that great either. But yeah, I thought Liam Cohen wasn't like, I thought maybe it was a little bit more like Baker being good, all that stuff, because truthfully with like even just decent situations, Baker's been pretty good throughout his career. So I didn't see Liam Cohen being like all too great to start off the season, even just going 0-5. Like, to be fair, this was the first game of Liam Cohen, and then pretty tough opponents to start off the schedule with the Bengals, 49ers, and Chiefs all being within my playoff teams, even the Rams. Like, and the only playoff teams that I did not have the Jaguars were winning against after that first game was the Texans. It is based on my preseason predictions, but which when I say playoff teams for this video, I'm referring to the preseason playoff predictions. But yeah, I felt like the Jaguars schedule was a really tough one to start off, especially with a new head coach. So I thought the Jaguars was just not going to have that well of the season. They ended up going 13-4, so yeah. That's how this prediction went. But yeah, I just did not expect Liam Cohen to have that great. But Trevor Lawrence absolutely balled out in the second half. Like, that second half of the Jaguars was just so great. I did have the Jaguars being, like, overall better team as well, so I gotta give myself a little bit better on that bit as well. But, yeah, the Jaguars just absolutely played well in the second half. And then, hey, you know what? This is 6-11. May look pretty bad now, but it's probably one of the largest spreads, record prediction-wise, that I have. Because I don't think there's, like, anything else that's, like... Okay, maybe there's, like, one. Looking at it, there might be one. Actually, no, that's not even as bad. It's just one game difference. But, yeah, nobody expected... I think the Jaguars is probably the biggest. Actually, no. Was it? Hold on. Yeah, it's not. It's not. Okay. It's not the biggest missed spread, but with Liam Cohen, you really cannot expect it all too much, honestly. So I'll go ahead and say that I just had a miss here. I'm sorry, Jaguars fans, in early on in the season, but I absolutely think your team is legit now. But moving on, we had another bigger spread with the Las Vegas Raiders as being one of the worst teams, but I had them predicted at 7-10, like one game above the Jaguars. Like, how would you expect preseason wise for the Raiders to be as bad as they were? Like, they ended up winning a few games at the end of the season, and props to them to doing so, but like, no, wait, hold on. The Raiders did get the one pick, didn't they? They got the one pick? Yeah, they did get the one pick, okay. You did get the win in Week 18, but that was more so the, you already clinched it anyway, so, yeah. Overall, the Raiders, I thought the connection to Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, Jacoby Myers, well, not Jacoby, just Pete Carroll and Geno, and with that connection already being there from Seattle would like help greatly in Las Vegas already. Yeah, it was the first year with like just in general. I'm losing my thought right now. Like I truly am. But with it being their first year in Raiders, I thought that connection in Las Vegas, I thought that connection would absolutely help them out to win some early games, like the Patriots and the Bears. Hey, you know what? At least I predicted it to be like a close game. I'll say that because as much as I had the Raiders win, the Bears did win in a close game to where I wasn't like too far off. I was not that far off. To where it's like, that was pretty bad on my team. Which, you know what? At least is with the market prediction I had the Bears, at least there was a lot of close games to where it's like, at least it's not too far. Yeah, we'll just get into the Bears and the NFC side. When we do the NFC side next week. But going back to the Raiders, yeah, I just thought the connection was going to be a lot better for those early games and even just throughout the season. So you can't really hang your hat too much. I just thought that the Raiders was going to like be better than what they were. That's all I really had to say at this point. Moving on to the Houston Texans. Yeah, I expected them to have some struggles, especially on the offensive side, which I did see their defense being like overall good. I just did not think the offense would be all that great. Maybe I did not expect the Texans defense to be like the defense that we saw this year, but I expected them to be more towards the good side rather than the bad side. It was more towards like that. And then, but the offense, yeah, you really cannot say all too much. And you're going to see quite a bit of, I'm just eyeing the Cardinals, and that's easily one of my worst predictions of the year. Like, that truthfully is. Like, come on, man. That truthfully is. Just don't even want to cover, like, those two good teams of the NFC West on Tuesday. I'll have to. But I might do those two first. Who knows? I might do the Seahawks first, and then we'll see what I do the Cardinals. But, yeah. Overall, with the Texans, it was not too bad. And honestly, it was not too bad. Who knew that you would have, like, the massive winning streak after the Broncos game? Because honestly, the brackets are at least similar to each other throughout the first half. But then the second half was just all wins, actual. While I did not have, like, I kept the same kind of trend of, like, being around 0.500. So there really was not all too much to really say. All the season was really on track, but then the second half just derailed this prediction. So, yeah, I'll get myself back for the first half, but yeah, the second half really screwed this prediction. Going up to the Pittsburgh Steelers now is I have them as a losing record for the first time in the Mike Tomlin era. And, well, I did predict it to be the final year of the Mike Tomlin era because I thought this losing record would fire him. And, well, they did get a losing record, but they still parted ways. So, you know what? Now they have Megan McCarthy, which we'll get into the coach reaction. We'll get into more of a coach reaction video after the Super Bowl. Once we have, like, all of them. But, yeah. Overall, I did think the Steelers are going to be more towards the mediocre side, but maybe not having that winning record like they usually have, which was on track at first, I think. And the Steelers, okay, they did have a little bit of a stronger start of the season and stronger end of the season, but not as good at the middle. But, yeah, I guess, these 8 games was, like, all around. Like, they generally was not, like, strong start, strong end. They were just, like, average. You had a bit of a losing streak here, all that. You did have 4-game losing streak, Bengals, Bears, and it's Bills, Ravens, I predicted. But overall, I'm not going to give myself too much lag. I did predict a little bit of mediocre. Honestly, I'll say anything within, like, exact 1, 2, maybe even 3 is, like, more towards the winning side of predictions because at least I had it, like, around. At least it was more towards, like, around what I thought. Anything 4 or more is like, okay, that's just bad prediction. It's to that point. I'll say that. And maybe 3 or more, but at least 4 for sure. Moving on to the Chargers now. I did predict them to be more close to 500 at home, but still make the playoffs. As honestly, I wasn't too trustworthy of their defense coming into the season. And even just the offense. I was not entirely sure how the passing game was going to be outside of Lad McConkey. Wasn't entirely sure about the run game at first, especially for the beginning part of the season for Ryan Hampton. But I did expect later on in the season for the run game to at least come back. But I think the Chargers are going to be a little bit more of a passing team. It's a little bit more like just 0.500 year what I thought. They did end up going 11-6, which is 2 games better than what I predicted them. But hey, you know what? At least I did predict a 7 seed for the Chargers, and they were the 7 seed. So you know what? I'll give myself some credit for that bit because I don't think anything else was the correct seed. But yeah, I'll say that as the win. For the Bengals, who knew Joe Burrow would be injured throughout the middle of the season? That's pretty much what I have to say with this one. The defense I did expect not to be great. Maybe a little bit better than what they were last year, but not great still. As I think the offense was going... I thought the offense was going to carry the Bengals to the playoffs. But, yeah, Joe Burrow just got injured in the middle of the season. Like, I think it was maybe the Vikings game that was the first one. And that he came back this Ravens game. To where I predicted 4, 5, 6 wins in that stretch. And even if you want to go a little bit more, with the injury lingering the momentum, let's just say 7 to 8. So, yeah, it did impact a lot of games. Even just going from week 5 on, I only did have 3 losses. Meanwhile, even if you just look, even just during the stretch that Joe Burrow was injured, the Bengals only have 1 win. And I had, 6. So, yeah, you got to take that what you will. Actually, you know what? Outside in those injury games was the key difference in what actually happened. Because if I remove all but one of these games, honestly, I probably would have picked the Jets game as the win if I would have switched around. And just based on my preseason predictions, not based on what actually happened. Because what actually happened was the Steelers rather than the Jets. Which that was the one game that I had wrong within the stretch of week 5 to 12. That's awesome. But okay. That was okay. But yeah, I do think overall, if you just flip all those games from week 5 to 12 around, you pretty much have an exact record. So, I'm not going to fault anyone. I'm not going to give myself any slack and all that. It was a pretty good prediction. I just did not foresee Joe Burrow getting cut. Going up to the Broncos now, we do have the actual 1 seed as the 5 seed. So, I wasn't too far off with the Broncos. I do think 14-3 was a little bit more towards the unrealistic realm within what you would think preseason-wise. So, just 12-5 I do think is a pretty good win amount for the Broncos, especially coming off a wildcard berth, and Bo Nix having year 2 Sean Payton as well. So I did expect a little bit of a incline of a little bit more production out of the Broncos compared to last year, which arguably in terms of throughout the whole year probably, but the Broncos offense still wasn't all too great. The defense really did carry in the Broncos in my mind, but yeah, honestly, 12 wins isn't all too bad of a prediction. I'll give myself a pat on the back for at least having them near the top of it's technically outside of the Ravens 15-2, which is absolutely a horrible prediction at this point. You really did have them tied outside of the 15-2. I had them tied to the top, so that's pretty good, honestly. I'll take that in that case. I'll just take that. But the Colts, I'm not gonna lie. As much as people were saying 5 wins, 6 wins, all that stuff, they did have everyone was going to say they were going to have a worse record, even though they had Anthony Richardson at quarterback last year, to where this year with, and now this year they would have like an even worse record with the same like overall roster. I did not see it. I had them even getting one more win and actually winning the division based on how I thought the AFC South would play out, which, hey, you know what? Winning record, they were indeed one game away from that. I did not expect it to be like all up and then all down. I just had it like throughout the season. Because, like, okay, I did have them start 1-3, but then get back to 0.500 by the time of their bye week. And yeah, I just think, I just thought the Colts was just going to be like 0.500 team like throughout. I didn't think Daniel Jones was going to play like all too well, but I knew he was going to play at least good enough to where the Colts would like get to a winning record. And honestly, you can't even blame the Colts for like falling all too much during the second half after Daniel Jones got hurt. So, you know what? We could have been talking like one game away on the other side, where I was one game short, and rather than one game up. So, you know what? I'll just take this 9-8 record as like a win. And yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the Buffalo Bills, which I had exactly right. And even if you just look at all the losses that I had on here, they were all pretty realistic losses to predict preseason-wise as well. In actual, you did have the Dolphins, you did have the Patriots, you did have the Falcons. So there was like some inconsistencies, but overall, this was an exact record. I knew Josh Allen was going to have a pretty good year. I guess the Buffalo defense was better than what I thought, and the offense was worse than what I overall thought, but I still had the same record. And so you can't fault me too much on that, but the other two teams was not that great. As for the Chiefs, yeah, I at least predicted right that they would go 3-3 within the Rashee Rice suspension, like within those first 6 weeks while Rice was suspended. But I did not think is that they would have troubles after that. As I thought Rashee Rice was going to be there, like be that number one receiver that the Chiefs would need again to like play pretty good and give the Chiefs the Super Bowl. But yeah, that just did not happen. And Mahomes even got hurt in all those final 3 weeks. He's from the Chargers game to where he did not play those final 3 weeks with Gardner Minshew, with Watercoon playing. So you really could not give me like too much. You gotta give me some slack with these 3 games. But even if you just flip those 3 games, you still had a 3-game difference. So it's more towards the middle of like, okay, it's not like too bad, but it's also not that great either. So, you know what? Considering those 3 games, I'll at least take in that prediction. And you know what? You just would not think the Chiefs was going to absolutely lose all those games again, especially after Rashee Rice came back. So, you know what? I'll go ahead and take the L on what actually happened. But you know what? Even just going outside of those last 3 games, it wasn't like all that big of an L anyway. So I'll at least take the L for like like these middle games out in between the Wishy-washy suspension and the injuries, but at least the start of the end of the season was pretty on point for like what I thought would happen if Mahomes was playing. And finally, you had the Baltimore Ravens, which I predicted at 15-2. Outside of the Jaguars one, this probably, you know what? I can't even give myself any like potential slack compared to like the Jaguars and the Raiders and all that, because that defense generally was just terrible. And I thought the Ravens defense was going to be like excellent. So just a complete contrast of what actually happened compared to what I thought would happen. Compared to any other team in the AFC, I think this is truly the worst prediction that I even made. In the way it was only losing to the Rams and the Steelers was my prediction, but they lost so many other games throughout the season that I can't even defend myself, honestly. Even with this, like, I was a little bit of Ravens believer within the regular season, because honestly, I even had them going to the conference championship, winning against the Bengals, but it was still the conference championship. And just looking back at it now, it's like, yeah, this was a pretty bad prediction. And by this, I don't even want to go to the NFC. Can I just skip that? Because I'd rather have this be my worst prediction. Because the NFC is like so much worse. Well, but yeah, I'll just, yeah, I just want this to be like the worst prediction, but it's absolutely not going to be. As you can see within the playoff teams of the NFC, like, this is clearly one of the worst, but not the worst at all. So, yeah, I just thought the Ravens was going to be this dominant team, but they just were not at all on defense. So, yeah, that absolutely sucked. And I really cannot say anything about it. But with that, that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys liked it, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.